Hey, so I showed you in the last video the setup with the tie back, right? And that really was just to show you how that's configured. The protocols of how I choose to move forward with this are pretty standard for me, right? Meaning typically any dog that has a resource guarding issue around the food bowl or food items, this is the protocol that I follow. It may move more quickly for some, but I really focus on taking my time, not trying to hurry this process and getting each step of the way proofed. So when we create that tie back, if I have a seriously aggressive dog over food and food items, I will start standing at the back, start standing behind that that distance line, that tie back line, right? How far the dog can reach. I don't know why my Post-it's not sticking. It's driving me crazy. I'll stand behind that taped line, right? And I'll drop a piece of food, like literally a couple of pieces of food, and then I will move them across the line. If I'm feeding a raw diet, which of course, my dogs do, and many dogs do as well now, it doesn't matter that it's not kibble, right? So you saw me in the video with Poppy, and we had a little handful of kibble that was in that bowl just for demonstration purposes. But if it's meat, right? If it's Volhard, that's kind of this oatmeal looking thing, I'll drop a little splatter and move it across, right? It doesn't matter. I can mop the floor. So I really need you guys to get out of this mindset of, oh my God, I've put a hole in the wall. Oh my God, my floor is going to be dirty. My hands are going to be nasty. Who cares, right? Nothing is worth getting wrapped around the axle on those things if your dog wants to bite you or others, right? So I begin with a drop of the food and move it across the line. Drop some food, move it across the line. This allows me to help the dog see me as being helpful, being the one that provides them their food, being the one that makes it accessible to them, right? When food is out of range and they're driven by food, they're going to see a lot of arousal. You're going to see that tug on the leash, that pull on the leash, that get frustrated and really try to reach out for it, right? All of those activities end the game, in the meal. And what we're trying to do in those moments is have the dog start to understand that his behavior is the reason the food goes away, right? The food will be eliminated when he's in that frame of mind, acting in those behaviors. And I promise you, it only takes a day or two before the dog figures out, okay, if I'm still impatient, that food comes my way. If I act a fool, it goes the opposite direction, right? Sorry, let me turn this TV off. So that's a day, at least a couple of meals with multiple repetitions of exercise. My general guidance for advancing to the next phase of the exercise is that we have had at least 2 consecutive meals delivered without error, right? So remember I said if the dog lunges, pulls, paws, scratches, any of that kind of nonsense, food goes away, whether that was first portion or last. So when we've had 2 consecutive meals with none of that nonsense, then I will advance to the next level. So the next level for me is I hand feed. So the first day is drop and slide, right? So there's no way that the dog can actually access any part of my body. The second day, or the second phase, I shouldn't call it a day, is I will put a bit of food in my hand and hold it just across that line. The only amount of that dog's body that can reach me is his nose and his lips, right? and he can take that food out of my hand, and then I'll move my hand while he chews or swallows or what have you, get the next piece and move on, right? So it's hand feeding where he's starting to learn hands are not a bad thing. Hands are not terrible, right? Then I'm going to move to the bowl where I put the food bowl down and slide it in, just like you saw in the video that I did a few minutes ago, right? So we're going to work that exercise. That also is paired with sit and wait for the okay for that food bowl to move in. So day one with that drop and toss is really not a lot of obedience built into it. They'll start to be more and more as we go. Remember I said when we start giving the dog a portion of his meal and he lifts his head out of the bowl, I name that out, right? I want to start introducing that language so that when I start using it to get him to move out of the bowl, for him to be commanded out of the bowl, so to speak, that it's not a foreign word. It's not a surprise. He's heard it and he's associated with his face coming out of that bowl. I will also, when I start teaching this out, this phase of out, step towards the dog and with my secondary leash, move him to the side. So I'll step in, out, right? And I'm getting his body and his head to move away from that bowl. I ask him to sit, and when he does, he gets a much greater value food item. It might be fresh beef liver, it might be a piece of chicken, it might be raw hamburger, whatever, right? He's going to get a higher value item than what was in that bowl for coming out of it. Right? So I've been hand feeding now. I've done that. I've got him coming out of the bowl, and now I start to put that together with a sit and a reward of something greater value. So the stepping in towards the bowl, I'm really not going across that line. I'm just taking a movement forward with a leash motion out, sit, reward, right? So that movement forward is intended to help him understand that if I step towards his food bowl, he's to give it up, right? That if he's eating and I step in, he should back away, because I'm going to pair it with that word out and teach that, and it all becomes a little linear progression of me stepping and him moving. And again, this anticipation of what's going to be expected of him, he will just do as a response to my forward movement. So if I have a dog with real aggression, right, and I have young children or visitors in the house who won't know to stay away, I want that dog to anticipate that with anybody stepping towards his food bowl, he's to give it up, okay? That's part of what we're doing here. It will not replace safety measures and education for the people and putting the dog in safe places while he eats. It was not intended to replace that. It's just intended to give us one extra element of safety and clarity for that dog, right? So again, we're going to be practicing this. So this gets really hard now, right? The dog is eating. We say out. You may see him struggle into that. He's like, no, I'm not finished, right? We've all seen that. You're going to have to say no, out, and get some energy into that leash to move him. We're not talking yank him around. We're just talking be very clear and confident in your presence, so that he says, oh, that's a new energy from these people, right? And he responds to that. We're not talking yank and shove and physically intimidate or any of that kind of stuff. It's guidance. And there is a very distinct difference in guiding a dog energetically and manhandling them, right? Very big difference. So be aware of that. So I'll stay at that phase for a little while. Now, you can overdo out. You can totally overdo it where the dog feels like, crap, I can't eat and not be interrupted. So once you feel like the dog has learned out, and when you take that step and give the command, he moves, and you've given the reward, that's awesome. You may actually start to see the dog anticipating the higher value, and he'll step back and sit and look at you, right? Where's the beef liver? And for a few little bits, you're going to reward that, right? You're going to reward the fact that he's taking a break from that food and starting to look to you for an additional cue. When all of this starts to click together, then you're going to not practice out at every feeding. You still may be in portions of food, but you will start to let him eat them uninterrupted. And the reward may only come at the very end when he's done a good job. Then randomly throughout the course of a week, maybe once or twice, practice it. Once or twice, practice it. When we got all of that going pretty well and you're feeling confident and the dog seems to be getting it and the attitude seems to be gone, then you can take him off that tie back. Keep him on a regular leash so that if he loses his mind, you have the ability to at least move him away from the food bowl, or to protect yourself if you need to put some tension on that leash and do what I call the bow and arrow, right? Nope, sorry, you're not coming at me, right? Not that that's going to happen, but you got to be prepared. And so get him off the tie back, move him to a different space in the kitchen or the living room or wherever to feed him, so that he starts to understand this applies everywhere, not just tethered to the same corner of the kitchen day after day, right? When all of this is going well, then you want to start practicing with dropped food, where you have a piece of food that's edible for him. You just drop it like, oops, that fell off the counter. Oops, right? And you instantly tell him, leave it or out. Now, I know we haven't talked about leave it yet, but that's mine when something drops like that, is leave it, meaning you can't have it at all. So we'll come to that at another presentation, but that's the time I start practicing that. That's, oops, I dropped something, right? I knew it was going to be dropped, and I'm going to start working on having him not take things that don't belong to him or he doesn't have permission to have, right? So I hope this is making a little bit of sense. If you guys have questions about it, let me know. This really is a couple of weeks of protocol and then a whole lot of future sort of random practice. The meal delivery gets very predictable, sit, wait, and some random practices of out. But I want there to be consistency in this dog's life forever about how he earns his meals and what happens when food is around. No feeding from the table, no feeding from your chair when you're watching TV and you have popcorn with these dogs. They get nothing that isn't in their bowl or from you, right? You can hand feed them, but it has to be their food, right? And sort of a more controlled scenario. In other words, I don't want them sitting at the foot of your chair going, I'm hoping she's going to give me some popcorn. he should not be anticipating that, right? And he should be on his place anytime you all have food items out that do not belong to him. And then if you're going to give him something special, a treat, a snack, or whatever, or a piece of popcorn later, he earns it. He earns it by doing something very specific and in a different location than where you were just sort of having your snack. If that makes sense. Okay, so, but this becomes a lifetime of skills practice. You don't want to overdo it, because you don't want to create a dog that's frustrated by, I can't even eat my meal in peace, right? That would be no fun. So the first couple of weeks are heavy duty training, and then it just sort of becomes, hey, let's practice. Let's randomly see what happens. And we know that the skills are there, and all we're doing is kind of keeping them sharp. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions about this. And I would encourage you, listen, I should have said this at the top. If you have a true, legit resource guarder that's willing to bite you, biting you is a big deal, right? Biting a stranger is one thing. Biting you is a crazy big deal. But if you truly have a resource guarder and you are not confident in how to resolve it, hire somebody, even if it's just a consultation where they come, put eyeballs on the dog, put eyeballs on you, look for all those little gaps that we talked about, and show you these techniques to help you get this thing put under control. So this has been about the food bowl and the dog's meal. We will talk later about how resource guarding you or resource guarding his space might be addressed. Okay, talk to you soon.